Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to this. It's a very special edition, workshop style, interactive, hands-on session. It's the third in our series of cities supporting cities towards a circular economy. Most of you know this, but just in case there's somebody new here, it's important for us to note that the IURC program, which is a global program on sustainable urban development, bringing EU cities and non-EU cities together, is financed by the European Union. Normally at this point, I would ask you to write in the chat box what city you're from, but in this case, I'm going to do something a little different, and we'd ask you, because a bit later in the session, we're going to go into breakout rooms, and so it would be useful if you can just click on the three dots at the top of your screen and add, as you see, mine says Trisha Hackett, IURC-NA. If you can rename yourself, it's not renaming, but adding what city you're from or institution you're from. That would be great, so that it's easy for us to know where you're from in the breakout groups. I'm saying this, Susanna, is this session going to be recorded or it's not because it's a workshop style?
It's already being recorded, yes.
Okay, it's already being recorded. So this session is already being recorded. So want to let you know that. This is the first time we've done a series on a specific topic, and we think it's gone really well. The first session was with our collaborators and friends from Fort Collins, who were talking about their journey on their economic health strategy plan for including a first time focus on circularity. And then we had also heard from the representative in the EU delegation to the US on the circular economy policy and programs happening within the EU and supported by the EU, also a masterclass style presentation. In our second session that we had in January, we had a focus on policies, interventions, and strategies from city government, how they could support businesses, industrial manufacturing to implement circular economy practices. And we had a wonderful panel that kind of told us the great things that they're doing, but also a wish list for city government. So this has been a wonderful series. This is our third, and we've actually added this workshop as a result of the last session, because we heard from our participants that it would be great to be able to kind of do a deep dive in more of a peer-to-peer working style. So this series is being delivered and created in close collaboration with our friends from Fort Collins, and also Erin Kennedy from Metabolic, which is a Netherlands-based organization who have over a decade of experience advising business, governments, and nonprofits on circular economy. We've also had support from our friends in Vila Nova Famalicão in Portugal, who's a city that's been with us since the first phase of the IURC program. So it's been a really great first couple of sessions. Now we have this workshop style session, and then we'll have a final session in June. So I'm going to stop there and give the floor to Anna Guardati from the EU delegation to Canada to say a few words of welcome. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Tricia, and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are. And I'm very, very happy to introduce this workshop today, because I really like this program that we are supporting, because really cities are in the heart of all the green action, and I think circular economy is really a very, very good example of how the economy and the environment and everything related to managing waste is very much related, and is a kind of a successful link. And I think it's one of the topics that in the European Union we are putting like a high priority, and I think North America as well. So I'm really looking forward to hear what you're going to say. I'm very happy that Metabolic is participating here, and also very interested to see what you have to say and how you are working with all the stakeholders in the municipalities, private sector, and other associations. Also, I had the opportunity to meet here in Ottawa the colleague from Fort Collins, and I know that you are doing a great job. So I think it's going to be very interesting. So I just want to thank you for all your work. I'm very, very, very much looking forward to hear you today. And thank you very much, Tricia, for leading this workshop today.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna, for that welcome from the e-delegation. I've just had a reminder to remind you all, some of you have joined after I asked if you could add your city or institution next to your name. So if you click on the three dots at the top of your screen and click on that, it gives you an opportunity to rename. So if you could just add your city, because later we'll be in breakout groups, so that would be helpful. Also, I wanted to mention just quickly before I turn the screen over, the floor over, that there's been a great outcome of this, and maybe Molly wants to say something about that later. And I always say Annika from Essen, who's here, that as a result of this series, and we've had Essen, some representatives of Essen who've joined, who's actually working with Fortaleza on the topic of circular economy and IURC Latin America, a delegation from Fort Collins. We'll be going to Europe. We'll be with Amsterdam. We'll be with Erin at Metabolic, and they're also going to have the opportunity to stop by and learn from Essen. So I think I'm taking advantage of having Anna here to also to mention that, because we like to, the ripple effect of these webinars. Sometimes we feel like, oh, how much impact that we do they have? But I think that's a great concrete kind of impact that we've had, that through this opportunity to invite also cities from other regions of IURC, connections have been made on this very specific topic. So I think that's really, really wonderful. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to now hand the floor over to Circular. I'm going to introduce the three involved here. So Circular Economy Expert Erin Kennedy from Metabolic, I mentioned. Also, everyone you probably know by now, but I'll introduce her, Molly Saylor, who's a lead sustainable specialist for the city of Fort Collins, and Molly's colleague, Pummell, senior sustainability specialist for the city of Fort Collins. And they have been wonderful in developing and delivering this session. So over to you, Molly, Holly, and Erin.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that introduction. And thanks to everyone for joining and completing the three-step verification process to get into the meeting. It's great to have everyone here. I don't want to repeat too many of the things that were already said in terms of an introduction, but I did want to give a brief recap to some of the things we discussed in the first and second sessions. So in that first session, we talked about different circular economy strategies. So going beyond, let's say, just recycling products, there are lots of opportunities for setting up new supply chains where you can repair, refurbish, or remanufacture products. We also talked about some other circular economy concepts like urban mining. So really understanding what is in a city or the built environment, and trying to understand how you can collect those materials and cycle them back into products over time. We also talked about industrial symbiosis. So this is setting up opportunities for different companies to exchange materials directly rather than going through a traditional waste management system. We talked about the idea of building innovation ecosystems. So this is ways of bringing together different actors across the entire value chain for different products. For example, bringing together repair cafes with companies that are actually producing different products so that you can help them understand what types of failures you might see in those products and design them better, designing for recycling at the end of life, et cetera. So really trying to understand the process from beginning to end to create circular products. We also talked about ways that you can create an opportunity for innovation in the circular economy space. So setting up living labs for demonstrating and experimenting is one opportunity, but there are obviously many others. But of course, all of these concepts need to be built out into strategies for how you actually implement them. So we had each of the cities at the end of that first webinar session think about some of the waste streams and some of the industries that are present in their city, and consider some of the opportunities for connecting different waste streams or sectors in circular economy strategies. So this was really developing those high-level concepts. In the second session, we got into some of the nitty-gritty of what's actually needed to enable these types of strategies. We talked to businesses about what cities have done actually to support their activities and what they could do additionally. During that session, I took down some notes about different things that businesses found to be really critical for enabling the circular economy. And the idea for today is that we're going to build out this idea around what's actually needed to enable businesses, to enable this shift towards the circular economy. What types of actions can you actually take in different areas, and how can you actually start to build a strategy around these actions? So we're going to do 2 exercises today. In the first exercise, we're going to be doing a brainstorm together in a Miro board. So we're all going to throw in different ideas about the ways that cities can take action to create the enabling environment for the circular economy. So to enable businesses and other stakeholders to actually create this new system. So in a few minutes, we're going to go into a Miro board and we're going to come up with ideas. And you see that this is organized in different themes. So up here at the top, we have public procurement. Obviously, cities play a big role in terms of deciding which purchases to make for infrastructure, for public purchasing. There's also the physical infrastructure and spatial planning. So cities have a lot of control in terms of decisions made here. Less directly, cities can get quite involved in connecting different stakeholders to funding, creating policies that can drive forward different types of change. And then if we look a little further away from the direct sphere of influence that cities have, there's also a sort of indirect role that cities can play in convening and coordinating different stakeholders and raising public awareness and providing education opportunities. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend a few minutes just brainstorming specific ways that cities can support in these different thematic areas that transition to a circular economy. I've already added what I heard from that panel with the businesses in the second webinar, and I would like to hear from you all what other ideas you have or what you might have heard of actually being done in other cities. In the second part of the workshop, we're actually going to go into breakout groups that will be facilitated by me or Molly or Holly, where we're actually going to take some of these specific strategies and figure out how we can use these to enable a specific circular economy case or strategy. So without further ado, I think it would be good actually to switch over to the Miro board. And if someone could drop a link into the chat, I would appreciate that. And hopefully everyone will be able to get into the Miro board. Let me know if you're having any issues getting in.
Erin, I feel like while people are getting in, maybe the helpful reminder that the key to not being very frustrated when you work in Miro is to pay attention to whether your arrow or your like little hand icon is on, because the hand is what lets you move around without moving things. But if you want to move things, the arrow is what you need. And I think that if you are not familiar, that is like the one step to making this a good experience.
Yeah, great advice. So if you can see my screen in the Miro board as well, you can toggle between that arrow and the hand by clicking over here on the left side where it says select. So you'll see now I have the hand, which allows me to drag and move around or zoom in and out with my roller on the mouse. And if I click it again, then I can interact with the objects again. So that's definitely a useful tip. So what we're going to do is we're going to give everyone 15 minutes to just do a brainstorm. You can drag over these little Post-it notes to sections and type in them. If it makes sense, you can focus on one of these areas, thematic areas that you feel more comfortable with or you have a lot of knowledge in, or you can maybe spend a minute or two for each of them to try to come up with a couple of ideas, whatever you feel is best. But we're going to give everyone until half after to just throw some ideas in here as a starting point. Let me know if you have any problems. I'll keep an eye on the chat as well. I'm still seeing a lot of ideas being added, which is great. Looks like the creativity hasn't run dry yet. So let's give it 5 more minutes or so and we'll see how we're doing then. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again with everyone. So hopefully you can all see my screen now. In the second part of the session, we're going to go into breakout groups so we can work with a smaller group and have a bit of discussion. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick a strategy around the circular economy. We're going to describe what it looks like. We're going to talk about what some of the key barriers are to implementing that strategy. And then we're going to think about what actions can be taken now to create the right enabling environment, to set the pieces into place to actually realize the strategy. And for this last section, we're going to take from the work that we've just done up here above and try to identify the actions that can address some of those barriers and set things in motion. You'll notice here that there's an overview of some of the strategy concepts that cities came up with during that first session. So one of these can actually be the topic that your breakout group selects, or if there's interest in going for a different topic, that can also be discussed in the breakout group. So there's room for coming up with new ideas. But if each group doesn't have an idea in mind, then you can also take one of these ideas to work out together in your breakout group. So any other questions I think can be answered in the breakout groups because Molly, Holly, and myself will be leading those. So I think we can just go ahead and be delegated out into these groups. If someone can do that for us.
Yes.
See you all shortly. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Alessandra, I'll just continue quickly. Unfortunately, I just don't know exactly what the businesses have said. I don't have that information yet just because it's my second week. But we sent out a bunch of online surveys. So we have that feedback. And it was very positive to do a full-on ban of these plastic bags and styrofoam cups. I think a lot of businesses had switched already. And this was just kind of the affirmative, you've got to stop. So, but that's a good question. I definitely want that information myself, and hopefully I can share that with you guys too at some point.
Did you guys happen to select reusable packaging as well in your group?
We had food circularity in ours, but we did talk a little bit about some packaging because a lot of us have those things coming up. So
yeah, absolutely. It's a big topic right now for sure.
And it's definitely like grocery stores and food businesses that are also affected greatly by the packaging ban. So it kind of goes hand in hand a bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm laughing because our group also talked about reusable packaging for restaurants and takeout. So clearly there's a lot of juice there.
The hot topic.
Also was first on the list of examples. So there's also some bias in that, I'm afraid, as well. But anyways, I think everyone has rejoined the group as well, back from the breakouts. Apologies, because I know the time was super brief. I saw you guys probably didn't have enough time, and I think we could have talked about this for much longer. But I did want to leave a couple of minutes then for a short reflection. I'm curious, also given that we had the same topic, what some of the key barriers were that came up in the other groups. I can share from our group that the three barriers that we had were around, we were also looking at the reusable packaging scenario. And we talked about hygiene and also the social element associated with that. So also an aversion sometimes to reusable products. Secondly, the cost, so the economic situation. And then thirdly, the logistics or the techno-economic side of things. So how you actually find the right partners to set up a reusable packaging scenario and make sure you have the right expertise and information to do that properly. Curious to hear what you guys had in your groups. Molly and Holly. Maybe Molly, you can go first.
Yeah, in our group, the barriers we talked about were, we talked actually a lot about the cost to businesses and how to help especially small and sort of like, even really small businesses like food trucks make the transition, knowing that going from styrofoam to anything different is a big step, but actually getting to the goal of reusable can be quite challenging. And also the barrier of, we don't actually have a ton of availability of like true reusable circular systems in our community yet. We see them in other communities. And then, just even like more recyclable packaging is sometimes hard in some cases.
Mm-hmm. And Holly?
Yeah, so we focused on food circularity. And within this, we talked a lot about more education is needed to businesses and organizations of what redistribution looks like, especially following our strategies and really getting where can we redistribute to food, to people first, then animals, then compost, digester, all of those things that can get us really furthering our food and using it for good things. We also talked about barriers to the most marginalized and accessing them and sharing these opportunities and redistribution, as well as the needs that they possibly need within this area. In food security, I think a lot around food deserts and other ways that we can redistribute. With all that, it comes with a logistical issue of, one, landfill prices and tipping prices are typically cheaper than redistribution and doing the logistics. So that's something that we would need to incentivize. And we talked about that through policy, but great conversation with the group.
Great. And just another reflection point, how did your groups experience actually the exercise of taking these ideas about enabling actions and bringing them to those challenges? Because in our group, we discussed, for example, that one way to get around the tech challenge or really having the right knowledge and expertise would be to partner with universities. So that was one of the actions that we added. We discussed, creating the right enabling environment for the economic side and how you can create innovation challenges. So I'm curious if you guys had a similar experience in matching different actions to those barriers.
Yeah, I think that the big realization in our group was that we're really experiencing a lot of the same things, even though we have different sort of wording of our laws. And so it, I think just showed me that there's a lot more opportunity for sort of like peer and co-learning in the space, so that actually in even more detail of like, what are we actually sending to our businesses? How does our small grant program for businesses work? So I think there's actually just, this is a level deeper than we've often gone in webinars. And I think there's actually just still a lot more underneath it to go into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in ours, we talked about considerations for capacity building, whether that's through convening and coordinating and educating businesses or organizations for more business-to-business opportunities, organization to organization. I feel that's good ways to show case studies of how circular economy can work and what they would expect on their end. Then we talked about ways through policy to incentivize food redistribution through the mechanisms that I shared earlier. This can also look like, in a lot of ways, is public procurement of how we actually buy these things and putting further value into the redistribution and incentivizing more of the waste of going to landfill. And then we talked about the opportunities to convene with the most marginalized folks and or organizations that support them, and understanding ways that we can better assess what they are needing in this work, as well as how we can redistribute to food. So those were some of the things we chatted about.
Great. Well, it's a lot to squeeze into such a short hour. There was just one last point at the end that I wanted to close out with and hand over to Molly to talk about this next session briefly. So yeah, it was a very short session to get into the sort of nitty-gritty of actually building these types of circular economy strategies. If you think about the whole process of building an action plan for the circular economy, there's just a lot involved in that process. And we sort of, in a few minutes, kind of touched upon a few of the steps that you can take in that process. But this is something that Molly and Holly and their team in Fort Collins has been working on quite comprehensively, and it's actually going to be something touched on further in the next session. So Molly, maybe you can close off with a few points about that.
Yeah, and I know that some folks are already having to drop off, and that's totally fine, but just wanted to share that Fort Collins is actively integrating what we're learning through this series into a planning process for our economic health strategic plan, including circular economy. So we've taken the R strategies and actually built that out with examples from Fort Collins, or in our sort of Colorado and the Fort Collins region. So that's been really fun to see how many leaders we already have in this space to build on. And then Erin, if you hit the next slide, Just wanted to show that we also took quotes from our business panel and are sharing that with our city council to show how it's supporting awareness, convening, coordinating, connecting to funding based on what we're hearing from businesses in our cities that we're working with internationally. So this is really having an impact on our work, and will continue to as we do more visits, like Trisha mentioned. But also we're going to have the next session that's really going to be focused on what strategies are really showing up in plans, including ours, because by then we will have a better sense of our early sort of strategies. And just to help, if folks are interested in following along with our process, we're going to share the presentation that this slide and the other came out of, which was a presentation to our city council. So you can see how we're framing that up. We also have an existing conditions document that talks a little bit more about circular economy and what we've learned about our region as two of our planning documents. So we'll share those, and then we'll see you all next time to talk about, again, what plans are actually including with circular economy strategies. So I think that's a good place to leave it, and just 5 minutes over.
I just have a couple of quick things before you jump off. Sorry, Molly. Okay. Yeah, before you go, great. Big thanks to Erin, Holly, and Molly for this great session. We've never had such a participatory, interactive session, and I was a bit nervous when the mirror went up, and if people will really be jumping in, and then it was really fun to see all those post-its moving around the screen, and the very great ideas, and already that was getting to like a very specific level of detail and engagement. So this is really it shows how relevant this was for those of you who have participated. So thank you for joining us, and it's so great I love that slide, Molly, that you've just shared, because it's so great to, as I mentioned at the top, to see the direct impact from this kind of format on the actual work and work in practice. So really, like at the practitioner level, influencing policy is a great example. And then just a couple of things we have in the chat. The next session it will be on June 14th, so you can already register. And there's the survey. We'll be sending a survey as well. The survey link isn't in the chat yet, but please, there it is, the survey link. Suzanne's just put it in. It's 2 minutes. It's I know we've already gone a few minutes over, but if you could take 2 minutes to fill the survey, it's really helpful for us to know, what went well, what we could do better, and what you'd like to see for future sessions. So please fill in the survey right away when it's hot off the press, or we'll send an email as well that will include the link. There's also a link there to previous sessions if you didn't have a chance to join them. Yeah, and please join us on June 14th for the final session in this series. Thanks so much to all of you who joined, and to our wonderful creators and presenters of this and facilitators of this session. It's great to have you here. So great session.
Thanks a lot, Trisha. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day or afternoon.
Thank you.